Welcome back, Class 5, to your 6th maths lesson on fractions. So to start with today, Jamie says, I've put the following fractions in order. I've found their lowest common multiple, which was 40, and then scaled them so that their denominators were 40. So he's had a go at putting them in order. Pause the video and see if you agree. So he then says, I found my multiples and then my common multiple. So you can see here he's listed his multiples of 5, multiples of 4, multiples of 8, and found that 40 was his common multiple. And then he scaled them like this. Is that what you did? And then he's ordered them. Is that the answer that you got? But Sarah says, well, you didn't need to do all of that working out. You could have saved yourself lots of time by reasoning your answer. Do you agree? What do you think? So Sarah suggests that she would start comparing the fractions to a half, so splitting them up to fractions that she knows are smaller than a half or larger than a half. So she says, I know that 1/5 is smaller than a half and that 3/8 is just smaller than a half. How do you think she knows that 3/8 is just smaller than a half? Well, it's because 4/8 would be equivalent, wouldn't it? We've done some work on equivalent fractions already. So we're just going to check. We're going to prove it, okay? So I've got some little bar models here. So I'd start by comparing them to 1/2. So we're going to shade in what 1/2 would look like. She then knows that 1/5 is smaller. So let's shade in 1/5. So there are 5 equal parts and we are concerned with one of those parts. And that 3/8 is just smaller than a half. So this time there are 8 equal parts and we are concerned with 3 of those parts. And she's right, they're both smaller than a half. We're going to have a go now at placing them on a number line. So I would estimate that a half is around there. So that would be 1/2. Now 1/5, I need to pretend that my whole bar is split into 5 equal parts. And my first fifth, I'm going to say it would be here. Okay, so this is just an estimation to prove her reasoning. And 3/8, well, I know it's a bit less than a half, so I'm going to go with here. So I've already ordered 2 of my fractions. So let's have a look at the next bit. So that leaves 5/8 and 3/4. And she says, I would also compare these to a half. So I know that they're greater than a half, but I need to know how much greater. So I know that 5/8 is just over 1/2. And again, we know that because 4/8 would be equivalent. Okay, so again, let's have a look on our bar. So we've got a half, which we're going to shade in so we can compare and prove it. So 5/8. So 8 equal parts. We are concerned with 5 of those parts. So yep, she's right. It was just over a half. Whereas 3/4 is almost 1/2. Well, it is, isn't it? It's only missing one of its parts. So there's 4 equal parts. And we are concerned with 3. And again, we're going to have a go at estimating where they would go on a number line just to prove. So again, I'd say my half goes here. So we're always comparing it to a half. 5/8, well, I know it's just a little bit more than a half because 4/8 would be equivalent. So 5/8 go here. And then 3/4, I know, is going to be halfway between 1/2 and 1/2. So I'm going to say it would go around here. Do you agree? So now we've compared and ordered all of the fractions and we've not had to do any real working out. So our learning journey for fractions, we're now on day 6 and we're going to use reasoning to compare and order our fractions because I know how much you all love reasoning. Sorry. Okay, so today we are learning to compare and order fractions, but we're going to be doing it using reasoning. We're going to use our understanding of fractions and reasoning to compare 2 fractions. We're going to use our understanding of fractions and reasoning to order fractions and then to solve some missing digit questions and prove our reasoning by using bars, number lines and written explanations. Okay, so we're going to compare two fractions using reasoning. Now our first two methods for reasoning we've already covered this week. So 1/6 and 1/9. When the numerators are the same, the greater the denominator, the smaller the fraction. So 1/6 is greater than 1/9 because the greater the denominator, the smaller the fraction. And you can see that if you look at a fraction wall. When the denominators are all the same, the greater the numerator, the greater the fraction. So in this example, we've got 4/8 and 7/8. So 7/8 is greater because if I've got 8 equal parts and I've got 7 of those parts, I've got more than if I'd only got 4 of those parts. So when the denominators are the same, the greater the numerator, so the larger the number that is on top, the greater the fraction. But then our last one, we've got 1/3 and 3/4. Now, if we start by comparing them to a half, have we got one that's less than a half and one that's greater than a half? We have, haven't we? We know that 1/3 is less than a half, but 3/4 is greater than a half. So we know already that 3/4 would be greater than 1/3. And we've not had to do any working out. We didn't have to find a common denominator to do it. We just know that because we've been doing so much work on fractions. But we're going to prove it. So 3 equal parts, we're concerned with 1. Oh, shouldn't have gone in that bit, sorry. Or 4 equal parts, and we are concerned with 3. Again, we're going to place them on a number line because it's good to see it visually as well. So we start with our half. We always put our half on. Even if you don't want to label it, just put it on because it will help you. Then 1/3, so I've got to imagine my bar is split into 3 equal parts. So I'm going to say it would go around here. My 1/3 and 3/4, I know is halfway between 1/2 and 1/2. So my 3/4 is going to go there. Do you see that? So now it's your turn. I'd like you to pause the video and have a go at comparing 5/7 and 3/6. I don't want you to find a common denominator, I want you to use reasoning. So what do you know about those fractions? Use 1/2 to help you. Then if you can, I'd like you to draw the bars and a number line and have a go at placing them on there. Good luck! How did it go? Did you notice that 3/6 was equivalent to a half? And then did you know that 5/7 was greater than a half? Did you manage to draw a bar and shade in the equal parts? And did you manage to draw a number line and place them on there? Were they something similar to what I did? Next one, we've got 2/3 and 8/9. Now, with these fractions, which one do you think is greater? Now, when both fractions are one part less than the whole, so 2/3 is only missing 1/3, and 8/9 is only missing 1/9, you may find it easier to work backwards. So, for example, because we know 2/3 is 1/3 less than a whole, so we'd have these two coloured in and we're just missing this one. And 8/9, you'd have all 8 coloured in and one part missing. We know that 1/9 is smaller than 1/3. And so therefore, 8/9 is closer to 1/2 because 1/9 only takes up this small space, whereas 1/3 takes up a much bigger space. Now that might make sense to some of you and it might not to others, so don't worry. You can use the rest of your reasoning and thinking about where it is on a number line and in comparison to a half to work that one out. So pause the video, have a go. So far we've looked at comparing two fractions, but now we're going to have a go at ordering using reasoning. So we're going to start off by putting our half mark on. So I would estimate it would be about there. Now straight away I know that 5/10 is equivalent to a half. So I can put that one on and I can tick it off. it's done. Okay, now looking at those fractions, I need to see which ones are less than a half and which ones are greater than a half. So I know that 1/4 is less than a half. It comes halfway between 0 and a half. So I'm going to put my 1/4 on there. You could also imagine your number line split into 4 equal parts and put it on your first equal part. Looking at the ones that I've got left, I've got 5/6 and 4/7. Well, I know that 5/6 is almost 1/2. It's missing 1/6, isn't it? Whereas 4/7 is just over 1/2. Okay, so I'm going to put my 4/7 on, so it's just over 1/2, because remember 4/8 is 1/2. Okay, so we could look at 7 and say half of 7 is 3.5. So 4 is greater than 3.5, isn't it? So that's just a little way to work out your halves. So you half your bottom number, and that would give you your numerator. Then 5/6, we know is larger. It's going to go further up here because we've got 6 equal parts, and that is concerned with 5 of those parts. So can you see how there I have ordered my fractions and I've not had to do any real working out. Just use my reasoning and comparing my fractions to 1/2. So, moving on to the next question. First, think back to the 2 sentence stems from Monday's lesson and earlier today. Then have a go at ordering these fractions using reasoning. So pause the video. Okay, so did you remember that when the numerators are the same, the greater the denominator, the smaller the fraction? Okay, so you should have got 1/8 as the smallest, then 1/7, then 1/6, then 1/5, then 1/4, and then 1/2 as your largest. But then what about ordering these? Can you pause the video and have a go, and then come back for part 2 once you've done that?